It's easy to look at a plant this size that has produced just countless pounds of food for me and my family, and to think that you need to have some kind of exceptional skill or some years of experience and expertise to be able to do it. But the reality is that's the furthest thing from the truth. This was such an easy plant to grow, and today I'm going to show you how to grow your own Seim right at home in your backyard. Let's get straight to it. Hello everyone, thank you all so very much for being here for this video. I'm not going to be keeping you all long today at all. I just want to show you all what I did to produce Seim that's this size and that produces so much of food. I can't tell you, well actually I can. You all can go back and track my videos, YouTube and TikTok, where even Instagram, where I've been posting pictures and videos about picking Seim. I started my very first harvest of Seim was for Boxing Day 2022. So that produced in December 2022, and I can still harvest Seim from this tree here. Of course, now it looks really beat up. It's on the way out, but it has been producing for December, well, January, February, and now we're at the end of March. It gave me food over the course of 4 months, you know, like properly 3 months, 3 months, and for a few more weeks. So it really is something that's worth learning to grow, and it's something that you shouldn't feel at all, you know, daunted by. That it's something so super simple to grow and to have, and to be able to be self-sustainable, to be able to feed your family. Zero chemicals, 100% organic, with nothing but the ground and some manure that you all know that I use. So let's get straight into what we would do to grow something like this. When you're planting your Seim, you're going to plant it somewhere that gets uninhibited access to sunlight. That's going to be super important. Your Seim is a bean, and beans love sunlight. They love the warmth. That's why they grow so well in Trinidad. And that doesn't just go for Seim. It goes for bodi, any type of bodi. It can go for your Hunan wing bean. It can go for your string beans, contender beans. They all like sunlight. So the most amount of sunlight you can give your plant, in this case Seim, give it that uninhibited sunlight, direct sunlight, that the sun is shining directly on the leaves. Be mindful of that. If there's structure around, whether that's a tree or a permanent structure like a building, and try to put your Seim somewhere where it will get a minimum of 8 hours of sunlight. If you give it less, there's a higher chance that it will have deficiency issues. It may just simply also have pest issues, because the pest will sense that the plant is undernourished with sunlight. Sunlight itself is a form of nourishment. It gives the plant the energy that it needs to photosynthesize, to produce energy, and without that, the plant is not going to be able to provide nice, good nutrition and energy for the plant to be able to grow and produce good food for yourself and your family. One of the biggest things for your Seim is going to be space. Space is just one of the biggest factors when it comes to growing Seim. The Seim plant will do well when it has a lot of room to grow and to be able to spread its wings and to vine all over the place. It will literally take over any area that you give it. Here I have my clothesline that I haven't seen since last year, November, before the vine just took everything over. And I'm actually excited about getting rid of this Seim vine now, because I really want to be able to hang clothes here again. It's been a bit of a struggle with space to hang out close to the sun, right? But the point is that you need to have a lot of space for your Seim. Now, if you don't have that access either to growing in ground or to have a lot of space, I'm going to show you some ideas that you can use to be able to access the vertical space in your garden, because space doesn't just have to be like on the ground and then like this. It can also be this way, vertical space, and that's what I've done here in this garden. I found some pieces of bamboo, because we had some floods here last year, coming down to like September, even I think a little bit before August, just before I planted in the Seim. I think that we had some floods, and it had some pieces of bamboo that was just floating up in the water. So when the water, of course, settled, I didn't go into flood waters. Never go into flood waters. That's a very bad idea. A good way to die. Just try to wait until the flood has resided, and if there are a few things that came up with the flood water that could be of assistance to you in your garden, then feel free to wash it out, you know, sanitize it as much as you can, and then use it in your garden. Because I have all these pieces here of bamboo from the flood waters, and these pieces of bamboo, I just used one here, and the Seim has just taken over the entire bamboo, and use that as a bridge to like climb on the lime tree sometimes as well, because the Seim will just go wherever it has that space to go. So if you provide that structure, then the Seim is going to be able to grow and to go into all different directions. You do have to be careful, because it sometimes will take over areas for your other crops that are important to you as well. So you have to come in with your nippers and just dial it back, just give it a nice little trim to make sure that you get the space for everything. The amazing thing about the Seim, which goes for all beans or legumes, is that they have the ability to fix nitrogen. Nitrogen, which is what helps them to grow and to produce those nice leafy greens. I have a very old video, one of my first videos, where I break down the NPK, the different types of nutrition, the N of NPK meaning nitrogen, and you can have a look at that video. And you'll see that nitrogen is super important for something that is a bean, because most of the structure on the bean is just simply putting on leaves, growth with the vine, and having nitrogen is important. Now, nitrogen fixation, which is what beans and legumes are able to do, is that they're able to utilize the nitrogen in the atmosphere and to be able to basically suck it out of the atmosphere and fix it into their roots. And what they do that for is to be able to feed themselves, to help them grow, and eventually to put on the fruit and to give themselves that nutrition to put on the fruit. Now, what some people sometimes mistake, and I'll always mention this, is that if you grow a legume and you put it to grow and you let it grow to fruition, then that nitrogen is gone. There is no growing body, harvesting body, and thinking that, okay, I've put nitrogen back in the soil. It doesn't work like that, because what happens is that the plant produces little nodules on the roots, and that's where the nitrogen gets fixated. And if you let that plant fruit and produce that vegetable, then that nitrogen has now been mostly used and it's gone now. You're not going to get a big boost of nitrogen from that plant. Now, if you were to let that plant grow, fix the nitrogen, because it fixes the nitrogen in the growing stage, in that green growth stage here, that it will grow up, it will fix the nitrogen, and just as it starts to flower, you terminate the plant. You come in, you chop the plant down, you chop it up a little bit, and you even like let the roots start to decompose with everything else. You let it decompose right in the spot there. You probably just bring a rake and just spread it around, and let the plant break down, let it rot, let it now give that nutrition back to your soil. And that is truly where you can put nitrogen into your soil. So it's not about planting the legume, letting it go to fruition, then thinking you have nitrogen in your soil. No, you're not going to have any significant amount of nitrogen. You plant the legume, let it grow until it starts to flower. Don't allow it to fruit. As soon as it starts to flower, terminate the plant, just compost it in the spot, in the same space there, and you're going to get a nice boost of nitrogen for whatever you want to grow into that spot afterwards, which could be anything that you want to grow. When it comes to watering, Seim is one of those plants that doesn't like to be cuddled. That means you don't just come in and water same morning, evening, every single day. Yes, the sun is hot these days in March. Sorry, there's a bee. In March, which is really important, and I'm going to get to that in a second with the bees. In March 2023, right now, the sun is just brutal. That's probably one of the reasons why this vine is starting to go. But I don't think that's the main reason, because it has been producing now for months. So I think it's pretty much served its purpose. But the point is that Seim doesn't like to have too much just being overly watered, because one, too much water can cause root rot, which is a bit less of an issue now in the dry season. In the rainy season, the wet season, that's going to become a bit more important. But even more than that is that when you allow a plant like Seim that has the ability to form these huge, massive roots, and I'm going to show you all just how big and powerful the roots and even the vine is on this Seim. It's incredible how thick this vine is. It blows my mind. It's actually a little bit scary, because there's not many plants that will produce such a nice, big, thick, healthy stalk on it, where you understand where the story of Jack and the Beanstalk can come from. Because vines, sometimes you think of it as being these little straggly things, but it can become huge, massive, almost like a tree trunk in the form of like a vegetable, short-term vegetable in your garden. And that's just amazing, isn't it? Nature is actually truly amazing. Now, the roots of the Seim, by not giving it water all the time, you're going to be pushing the Seim to let those roots grow and go down even deeper, because you're going down deeper and you're searching desperately for water. That's a technique that's used by farmers to encourage trees, especially fruit trees, to become even more anchored. You don't water it all the time. If you water all the time, you're giving it a lot of surface moisture, and therefore the roots are going to tend more to spread out, where that's not always what you want. That's not the best thing. You want the roots to go deep. That's the way that the taproot will become nice and developed. It's going to pull up even more nutrition from in the earth, the minerals that's in the ground, and that's going to give you a better produce, and that's going to allow you overall to have even more nutrition, not just in your food, but also in your garden, because by the plant going down, it's going to bring up your nutrition. It shows you that you form that nutrition in the form of leaves and branches and twigs, and then that will now fall on the surface of your soil, break down, and then that nutrition that was just many, many feet underground, that is now on the surface, and that's going to break down and then feed that first layer of soil in your garden and help rejuvenate the nutrition that's in the soil in your garden. So that's just amazing. So don't overwater your Seim. Once for the week, once, twice for the week is what I would do with the Seim here because it's in the ground. If it's in a raised bed or in a container, then you would want to water it a little bit more because the water does tend to dry out a little bit. The fastest would be in a container. The water will dry out. So maybe once every 2 to 3 days, that'll be fine. If it's in a raised bed, maybe once every 5 days. In the ground, once or twice for the week. And listen to your plant. Come and look at the plant. If the leaves looks like nice and thick, strong, sturdy leaves, then it has enough moisture. Even if the top looks crusty and dry, that's fine. If you do come in and you're finding that your leaves look fairly droopy and kind of wrinkly, then that's one of the cases where you listen to your plant, whether you watered yesterday or whenever it was. Come in and give your plant a nice drink of water because that's a sign that the plant is stressed. But once your plant looks nice, the leaves are nice and sturdy, thick, then don't water your plant. Even if it goes a week and you haven't watered, if the leaves look fine, then don't bother to go and rush to water because you're training your plant to grow nice, thick, deep roots, which will overall make the plant bigger, healthier, stronger, and produce more healthy, nice food for you. Now, back to my friend the bee, something that you're going to find is that your Seim plant will encourage a lot of bees to come onto your premises, into your property, and that's just completely normal. And remember to leave the bees alone because they are doing something really good for nature. They're the ones pollinating your flowers. That's how you're going to get Seim produce. But just be careful because sometimes it can be a lot of bees. I've just had to move a little bit further away now from the Seim plant because there's a big bumblebee that's just buzzing around now, and I was bitten, well, not bitten, stung by a bumblebee when I was really small, so I have a little bit of a phobia of the bees, those kind of bees now. So I'm just being extra careful. But remember that they are our friends. They just sometimes will attack if they feel threatened. So just try not to let them feel threatened in any way. Let them do their thing. If you have kids, tell them to keep away from the plant. It's normally in the morning times from like about maybe 5:30, just before the sun rises properly, until probably about 7 o'clock. Once it gets hot, they don't stick around. And then the evening time, like right now, is about 5:30 p.m. So from about like 4:30 to maybe 6, they're going to be around. So just be mindful of that. But we'll also be mindful of how important they are to us and our garden. And feel free that if you're able to, encourage to have flowers around your property because that's going to encourage even more bees, which will help you in turn to have bigger, better harvests in the future. And that's really it when it comes to growing Seim. There's nothing complicated at all here. If I can grow a plant like this, anybody can do it. Trust me, I'm sure that you're going to be able to do it, and I believe in you, and I'm happy to see your updates. So feel free to tag us on Instagram, TikTok, on Facebook so that we can see what's happening in your garden, and you can follow us on any of those platforms because it's just such a nice thing for us to share and have this little community of gardening where we help each other out, we share tips. I learned so much from you all, and you all are such a big, massive motivation for me and for the channel. Remember, as always, this has been the Love of the Trinidad Gardener channel reminding you to get up and get growing. Take care.